Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Sadaf Ashmat. I have completed my MDS in oral pathology in August 2020. Today I am going to talk about basics of salivary gland and saliva. Now the salivary gland has broadly two parts, the terminal secretory unit and the ductal system. The terminal secretory unit consists of acini or acinus, that are the secretory cells of the salivary gland which produces saliva. The saliva produced by these cells is transported through the help of a ductal system and is made to reach the target site, that is the oral cavity. Hence, salivary gland is called as an exocrine gland. Now, as you can see in the terminal secretory unit, the cells are very closely attached to each other. Hence, it is called as an acini or acinus, which also means the same. We will be studying about these parts in detail in further slides. Now let's study about the development of salivary gland. The salivary gland starts developing in 4 to 6 weeks of intrauterine life. Now first, in the pre-bud stage, there is a proliferation of oral epithelial cells. This proliferation will lead to the formation of focal thickening of epithelial cells. Now as it proceeds to the early initial bud stage, the thickened area, because of repeated proliferation of epithelial cells, it grows into the ectomesenchyme. Ectomesenchyme is a connective tissue consisting of neural crest cells. These are the cells which are only seen during the embryonic life, and these are migratory cells. So these cells travel to different parts of the body and give rise to various structures. After forming the bud in the early initial bud stage, later proliferation transforms it into late initial bud stage, where the buds connect to the surface by cords of epithelial cells and the mesenchymal cell condense around the bud. This follows by the formation of pseudoglandular stage, where the clefts develop in bud, forming 2 or 3 buds because of branching morphogenesis. This happens because of the actin present at the basal and apical end of the cells and leads to the formation of cleft and deposition of extracellular matrix. The epithelium and mesenchyme interact with each other because of fibroblast growth factor and transforming growth factor. After forming pseudoglandulars, it leads to the canalicular stages where lumen is formed. In branched epithelium, lumens develop at the distal end first and then to the proximal end and then in the center. Lumen of the duct is formed first and later it is formed in the terminal branches. After the lumen is being formed, an adult salivary duct develops. This develops when the epithelium and the terminal buds consist of 2 layers. Inner layer of secretory cells, outer layer of myoepithelial cells. Again, the luminal and abluminal cells comes here. Now, as the gland increases in size, connective tissue will diminish mostly, and the thicker portion of connective tissue continue as a capsule. It inserts into the duct and divide the gland into lobes and lobules. The parotid gland starts developing in 4 to 6 weeks of intrauterine life from the buccal epithelium of stomatodia. Submandibular gland, which is the second major salivary gland, it develops in 6 weeks of intrauterine life. It develops in the sulcus surrounding sublingual folding in the floor of the mouth. Sublingual gland, which is the smallest major salivary gland, develops in 8 to 12 weeks. Cells of acini mature in the last 2 months of the gestation and the gland keeps growing for 2 years postnatally. Now coming to major and minor salivary glands, they are categorized as major and minor based upon their size. The major salivary glands are little larger in size and also they have long ducts which carry the saliva to the oral cavity. And in minor salivary glands, the ducts are very small and overall size of the gland is also very small. So the major salivary glands, they are 3 main major salivary glands, namely parotid, sublingual and submandibular. These are paired glands, that is, they are present bilaterally, and these are all present extraorally, out of which Parotid is the largest gland and accounts for almost production of 80% of the saliva. Parotid produces serous saliva, that is, saliva produced through parotid is very watery. Now coming to minor salivary glands, there are numerous minor salivary glands present in the oral cavity and they are named after the anatomical site where they are present. It is said that there are almost 600 to 1000 minor salivary glands present in the oral cavity and every gland has its own separate distinct capsule. So, minor salivary glands are labial, buccal, lingual, palatine, alveolar mucosa and floor of the mouth. We'll see about them in detail in the next slide. Now coming to parotid gland, it is the largest salivary gland and weighs about 14 to 28 grams. Craniocaudally, the measurement is 5.8 and ventrodorsally it is about 3.4 centimeter. It is divided into two lobes, superficial and deep lobe. The superficial lobe is present in front of the external ear and the deep lobe is present behind the ramus of the mandible. The blood supply of parotid gland is through the external carotid artery and the nerve supply is from the glosopharyngeal nerve and the auriculotemporal nerve. Stenson's duct is the excretory duct of parotid gland which opens opposite to the second maxillary molar. The lymph node drainage of parotid gland is via the paraparotid and intraparotid to the deep cervical lymph nodes and superficial cervical lymph nodes. The secretions of parotid are purely serous. Some mucous acini are also seen, but the secretion is questionable. There are a lot of fat cells present around the parotid gland and these fat cells increases as the age increases. It is also reported that a dense lymphocyte aggregate is also present in association to parotid gland. Now after parotid gland, let's go to submandibular gland, which is the second largest salivary gland. It is also called as submaxillary gland. Its weight is half of that of parotid gland. The secretion of submandibular gland is mixed. It has both serous and mucous acini, but serous acini predominates. It lies in the medial aspect of the body of the mandible in the submandibular triangle, which is posterior and superficial to the mylohyoid triangle. The main excretory duct is the Warthin's duct, which runs forward and above the mylohyoid muscle. This gland receives the blood supply from lingual and facial arteries and nerve supply from the facial nerve. Lymphatic drainage is to the deep cervical and jugular chain of nodes. Now the next largest salivary gland, which is actually the smallest salivary gland among the major ones, is the sublingual gland. It is the size of an almond and the sublingual gland lies between the floor of the mouth. Sorry, it is almond shaped. It composed of many small glands and one main gland, and the main duct, that is the Bartholin's duct, opens with or near the submandibular duct. Several small ducts, like the duct of Ravenous, open independently along the sublingual fold. Sublingual gland is a mixed gland, but the mucous secretions predominate. It receives its blood supply from sublingual and submental arteries and nerve supply from the seventh cranial nerve. The lymphatic drainage is to the submandibular lymph nodes. Now coming to the minor salivary gland, as I said, they are named after the anatomical location. And all the salivary glands of small size, that is the minor salivary glands, have a mucus secretion predominantly, except the von Ebner's gland, which has a serous secretion. Now von Ebner's glands, they serve to wash out the trough of the papillae and make them prepared for the new stimulus. They have significant role in the digestive and the protective functions of the oral cavity. And as I already mentioned, the serous saliva has enzymatic activity and antimicrobial activity. Likewise, the serous saliva produced by the von Ebner's gland has enzymes like lingual lipase, which has an acidic pH optimum so that it is capable of hydrolyzing triglycerides in the stomach. The fatty acid produced by the lingual lipase help to emulsify the remaining fat and increases the efficiency of pancreatic lipase in the intestines. In newborn, when fat intake is high and levels of pancreatic lipase is low, lingual lipase play a very important role in lipid digestion. salivary glands are of three types: serous salivary glands, mucous salivary glands, and mixed salivary glands. In serous salivary glands, it secretes watery saliva. The mucous salivary glands secrete viscous saliva. The saliva secreted by mucous cells is thicker compared to the saliva secreted by serous cells. Now the mixed salivary gland, it secretes saliva of a mixed consistency. Now cells of salivary gland are classified into two broad categories. The first category is luminal cells. Now what do you understand by luminal cells? These are the cells which line the lumen. That is, they are present inside the structure of secretory unit. The serous cells, the mucous cells, and the ductal cells are the luminal cells of salivary gland. Second category is abluminal cells. These are the cells present away from the lumen. That is why they are called abluminal. So they are present outside the secretory end pieces. So myoepithelial cells and basal cells of excretory duct are the abluminal cells. Now let's have a look on luminal cells of acini in detail. The first one is serous cell. Now in this picture we can see one acinus consisting of many acinar cells. The serous cells, they are pyramidal in shape with a centrally placed nucleus and a broad base. The apex of the serous cell is thin. The center has a lumen which is star-shaped, and this star-shaped lumen extends between the cells. This extension is called as intercellular canaliculi. So the cells of serous acini rest on the basement membrane of myoepithelial cells, and these cells, they are tightly attached to each other with the help of cell junctions like zona occludens, zona adherens, and macula adherens. Now as I mentioned about the apex of the serous cell is narrow compared to the broad base, and this narrow apex will consist of many granules which are called as zymogen granules. This is very specific for serous cells. Now when in the initial stages of development, these granules are very pale staining. They can be stained with toluidine blue in order to study, especially in electron microscopy and ultrastructural images we can see them. We cannot see them in H&E sections as such. So yes, when they grow, when they mature, they become darkly stained. When the acinar cells are at rest, means they are not producing saliva, then numerous zymogen granules can be seen. But when they are active, they are performing some function. That time, because of exocytosis, many granules will be lost from the acinar cells. There will be less granules present in the cells. Now what is this process of exocytosis? It is basically a process in which the granules are secreted in the cells and expelled out into the lumen. So how does this process start? Let's see now. Firstly, the nucleus sends signal in the form of mRNA, and this signal is received by the ribosomes. Ribosomes, they go and attach to the endoplasmic reticulum and form the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And as we all know, rough endoplasmic reticulum's function is to produce proteins. Now these proteins from rough endoplasmic reticulum are transported to Golgi apparatus, where they are further organized and packed in the form of vacuoles. At this stage, in the vacuoles, pre-secretory granules are present. Okay. Further, these granules mature and then they fuse with the cell membrane of the acinar cells. After they fuse with the cell membrane of the acinar cells, they are expelled out into the lumen. This process is exocytosis. Now if this process happens very rapidly and a rapid secretion of zymogen granules is seen in the form of string of pearls appearance, it is called as compound exocytosis. 80% function of the serous acinar cell is to produce zymogen granules. Apart from this, it produces some other proteins also. The function of serous cell also includes to provide enzymes to the saliva and also to maintain the antibacterial properties of the saliva. Now the next cell is mucous cell. This cell is structurally, functionally and histologically very different from the serous cell. Firstly, this cell is also pyramidal in shape, but it does not have a wide or star-shaped lumen seen in serous cells. Secondly, it does not have intercellular canaliculi also. The nucleus of mucous cell is flat and is pushed towards the base because of the heavy mucus content in the form of mucus droplets present in the cell. The mucus droplets, they will push the nucleus towards the base, Hence, it is flat. This mucus droplets contain high amount of carbohydrates, because of which the saliva secreted from these cells is viscous or thick in consistency. Hence, the main function of mucus cell is only to protect or lubricate the oral cavity and does not perform other functions like enzymatic activity or antimicrobial activity. Like the zymogen granules in the serous cells were released into the lumen through exocytosis, the mucus droplets are also released from the mucus acini, but not by exocytosis. The process here is different. These mucus droplets present inside the cell will fuse with the cell membrane of mucus acini. Then they will get fragmented. They will be broken into smaller pieces and then expelled out into the lumen. Coming to histological appearance of mucus cells, these mucus cells are usually arranged in a tubular-shaped acini where many mucus cells are there, having a very hazy or light pink color cytoplasm. This cytoplasm appears as if it has some fragments present in it and gives a very hazy and foamy appearance compared to serous cells, which is comparatively densely stained. You can see the nucleus is pressed towards the base and is not present in the center. The mucus droplets is visible in the HNE sections. For studying that, you need to use special stains and special techniques. Now, another category of cells which we can find sometimes in salivary gland is serous demileunes or mixed seromucus. In this, the mucus cells are capped by the serous acini, but this is said to be an artifact. Now, apart from serous and mucus, there is a third category of salivary gland which we can see is the mixed salivary gland, in which there will be some acini of serous and some acini of mucus. Some glands are predominantly serous, though they are mixed. Some are predominantly mucus, though they are mixed. This we will see in further slides. Now, coming to the next part of the luminous cells is the ductal system. In salivary gland, we have mainly three types of ducts: intercalated duct, striated duct, excretory duct. The structure of salivary gland is also called as tubuloacinar structure. Why is it called so? Because of the presence of small tubules along with the ducts, it is called as a tubuloacinar structure. And it is also called as a compound gland because of the same reason. So now in the next slide, we will see the different type of ducts in detail and study about them. Coming to the first duct is intercalated duct. Intercalated duct is lined by loop cuboidal cells and it does not have abundant amount of cytoplasm present in it. These are the cells which receive saliva from the acinus, and the saliva received at this stage is isotonic in nature. The intercalated duct cells are very much similar to serous cells in terms of the kind of nucleus that they have or the organelles that they have, and intercalated duct cells also has certain granules in which enzymes like lactoferrin is packed, and this will help in modification of the saliva. Apart from this, the intercalated duct has some undifferentiated cells also in them, which will come into role when there is some damage taking place to the acini. So if the acini is damaged because of any reason, the undifferentiated cells will differentiate into some kind of cells in order to repair the damage. From intercalated duct, the saliva then flows into the striated duct. Now, striated duct is the largest part of the ductal system, and it is different from intercalated duct as it has striations on the basal end of the cell, and moreover the cytoplasm also is abundantly present in the cells of striated duct. Now, the cells of striated duct are tall columnar cells. Now, the striations which are present on the basal end of the striated duct cells is nothing but the enfoldings of the plasma membrane, and between these enfoldings there is abundant amount of mitochondria present in them, and because of these mitochondria those striations are seen. And mitochondria, as we know, is the powerhouse of our cell. So wherever abundant amount of mitochondria is present, there will be abundant amount of activity also present. So the sites where mitochondria is present provides a site for reabsorption of various electrolytes. The secretion of saliva is explained in detail in further slides, but now I'll give you a briefing about it. Exchange of sodium, chlorine and other electrolytes takes place at these sites in order to make the isotonic saliva received from the intercalated duct into a hypotonic saliva. From here onwards, the hypotonic saliva only will be carried forward to the excretory duct and that will be expelled out into the oral cavity. Now, as the striated duct follows its path, some of the striated duct cells will join together and form an intralobular duct or the excretory duct. Now, as these striated ducts start joining each other, they will lose the striations and they will form two layers. One will be the mucosa, other will be the connective tissue. The connective tissue is present on the outer side and the mucosa is present towards the inner side. The mucosal epithelium is pseudostratified columnar epithelium, which means the epithelium will look as if one cell is up, other is down, one is up, other is down. It will give an appearance as if multiple layers are present, but it is not like that. It will be one layer of cell only, but the arrangement of cell will be like that, that it will give an appearance of multiple cells. It will be one layer of cell, one will be the little larger, other will be little small. They will be enfolded in such kind of a way. And as the ductal epithelium goes from there to the orifice of the oral cavity, there will be certain changes in the type of epithelium. It will have a transition to stratified cuboidal and finally into stratified squamous epithelium where it merges with the epithelium of the oral cavity. The connective tissue which is present on the outer surface of this excretory duct has some kind of elastic fibers also present in it, which will help the excretory duct to stretch in order to collect the saliva and pull it out into the oral cavity. Apart from these cells, some other kind of cells are also seen in association with the excretory duct. Those are tufts or the lymphocytes, an antigen presenting cell, dendritic cell, and so on. So in the picture we can see the histopathological image of the various structures of salivary gland which we have studied till now. First is the serous acini. You can see the serous acini is arranged in round shaped acini and many acinar cells are present in it. The nucleus is darkly stained and is visible. You can see the cytoplasm also is quite abundant when compared to the mucous cell which we saw in few slides before. Okay, so because of the round structure, pyramidal shape and the dark stained nucleus, you can identify the serous cells. Next to serous cell is intercalated duct, which is usually seen very close proximity to the serous cells. They have a very thin lumen as you can see here and low cuboidal cells lined around. So because of the shape of the cell and their proximity to the serous acini, you can identify them as intercalated duct. Usually the size of the lumen gives you an indication of the type of duct it is. Now second duct which we studied is the striated duct. This you can see the lumen is slightly larger than the intercalated duct and the cells lined is tall columnar cells. After striated duct, the next what we have studied is an excretory duct. The excretory duct has the largest lumen out of all and it has a pseudo-stratified squamous epithelium as we have already read. And usually excretory duct is called as an intralobular duct. Before going into what is intralobular, let me explain you what is a lobe and a lobule. Now, the salivary gland acini are divided into different lobes. Different lobes are nothing but they are compartments which are separated from one another with the help of a connective tissue in between. The connective tissue is in between divides as a septa into different lobules and further partition of these lobules within them is called as lobules. It is like a big house having different rooms. The big house is a lobe, different rooms are lobules. Okay, so sometimes this excretory duct, it is present within this lobe. That is why it's called as intralobular excretory duct. If it is present between two lobes, it will be called as interlobular excretory duct. Okay, the salivary gland is richly supplied by connective tissue having a lot of blood vessels and nerve supply also. Now coming to abluminal cells, we study about the myoepithelial cells or the basket cells. The myoepithelial cells are primarily epidermal or epithelial in origin, but they have some smooth muscle activity detected in them. That is why they are called as myoepithelial cells. They are also called as basket cells because it looks as if they are holding some SNR cells inside them, like how a basket holds fruits. That is why they are called as basket cells also. Now coming to the structure and shape of myoepithelial cells, for easy understanding, it can be divided into two parts. First is the stellate or fusiform shape cell body, and the second is the cytoplasmic extensions of it. Now, myoepithelial cell extends around the secretory end pieces and the intercalated duct. When it is seen in association with the secretory end pieces, it gives a very smooth outline because the cytoplasmic extensions run deep into the grooves of the SNR cells. But when seen in association with the intercalated duct, the cytoplasmic processes are very less in number. Hence, they don't extend deep into the ductal cells and look as if they are sitting on the top of the intercalated duct, and hence gives a bulgy appearance to the intercalated duct. Now, the cell body of the myoepithelial cells consists of a centrally shaped oval to round shaped nucleus present in them. The surface of the cell body consists of some invaginations called chevrulae, which are responsible for exchange of metabolites, it seems. The myoepithelial cells are attached to the secretory end pieces with the help of desmosomal junctions. The cytoplasmic processes consist of some filaments which is 6 nanometer in thickness, and between these filaments there are small bodies which are around 10 nanometer in diameter. It is said that because of these bodies present in them, it is have the property of contraction. Now coming to the functions of myoepithelial cells, as we have seen that myoepithelial cells have some smooth muscle activity. So the most important function of it is contraction. It is present on the top of secretory end pieces and intercalated duct, right? So what it will do is it will contract so that the saliva produced by the SNR cells of the secretory end piece push the saliva into the intercalated duct, and from there it is pushed further to other ducts so that it is spilled out into the oral cavity. The structure and shape of myoepithelial cells cannot be appreciated in routine H&E section. Hence, it is produced by the immunofluorescent and immunohistochemical methods. The myosin component present in it is identified and proved using these techniques. Other functions of myoepithelial cell is anti-cancer effect. It seems they are the last cells in the salivary gland to be affected by tumor invasion, and in case if they get affected and starts invasion, it means the tumor is very aggressive. Because the myoepithelial cells generate certain signals like the tumor suppressor genes, which keeps the salivary gland protected against the tumor invasion. Other functions of salivary gland also include that they help in maintaining the polarity of SNR cells. Some signals generated by the myoepithelial cells helps the nucleus and cereognaries of the SNR cells to be there in their place. The last function which is known about the myoepithelial cell is that it helps in maintaining the patency of the ductal cells. The shape of the ductal cells or the duct is maintained because of myoepithelial cells. Coming to the secretion of saliva, which is a two-step model. The first step is formation of primary saliva, which takes place in the SNS, and second is a ductal modification. Now, as we know, the salivary gland is surrounded by a dense connective tissue capsule. This capsule consists of many blood vessels and nerves. So, some of the nerves will release the neurotransmitter through vesicles, and this will lead to the release of granules from the SNR cells into the lumen. Along with this, there will be secretion of electrolytes and water and contraction of myoepithelial cells. Now, events taking place in the SNS will lead to isotonic saliva. This saliva is isotonic in comparison to the plasma. From here, the saliva is transported to the duct for further modification. Now, here starts the ductal modification, that is the second stage. All the events taking place in the ductal modification will take place in the basolateral side of the ductal cells. Now, what happens is parasympathetic and sympathetic neurotransmitters will activate these cells, because of which there will be entry of chloride from the lumen into the ductal lumen, and there will be entry of potassium also. Now, because of chloride, it is a negative ion, so there will be increase in negative charge. In order to balance this, sodium will also be called, and it will balance through its positive charge. Now these ions will again get reabsorbed in the ductal modification, like the potassium will be further added and sodium and chloride will have to leave the lumen. This cycle takes place along with the role of bicarbonates also, which we will study in detail in the next slide. But the saliva produced because of this ductal modification will be hypotonic in nature when compared to the plasma, and this hypotonic saliva is the one which is excreted out into the oral cavity, because of which the pH of saliva is around 6 to 7. Now I have told you how isotonic saliva is made. Now we will see how it turns into hypotonic and what are the ductal modifications that take place. So the binding of sympathetic neurotransmitter, that is norepinephrine, to beta adrenergic receptor on the basal lateral membrane activates the G protein, which will in return activate adenyl cyclase, and that will lead to formation of cyclic adenosine monophosphate or CAMP. This will happen with the help of adenosine triphosphate, that is ATP. Basically what will happen, one protein will activate another protein will activate another, like a relay race it will happen, and finally we will get a hypotonic solution. Now we will see what are the components of this relay race. Now the CAMP has been activated with the help of adenosine. This will further activate more proteins. Now CAMP will then activate protein kinase A. This in return will phosphorylate. Phosphorylate means adding phosphorus to it. Now proteins, in order to activate and function, they need to be phosphorylated. They need to have extra phosphorus in them in order to become active. Now phosphorylation will take place and a cascade of reactions will happen, because of which exocytosis takes place. What will happen? The granules present inside will finally spill out into the lumen. Now, along with this, the fluid and electrolyte secretion is stimulated by binding of parasympathetic neurotransmitter, that is acetylcholine, to muscarinic cholinergic receptor, and also by norepinephrine, which binds to alpha adrenergic receptor. Now, norepinephrine is binding with alpha adrenergic and beta adrenergic both. Now, all these receptors, they will activate G protein, which in return will activate phospholipase C or PLC, and then they will convert phosphatidyl inositol biphosphonate, that is PIP2, to inositol triphosphate. It was bimolecule first and now it will become a trimolecule. What will happen because of this? It will cause the release of calcium from intracellular store. Every cell will have calcium inside it. So now what it will do this? It will increase the level of that calcium. Now if calcium increases, it will open doors for chlorine and potassium also. It will ask them to come inside also in order to balance the entire electrolytes balance. Now because of which what will happen is, chlorine will come inside the lumen and potassium will come in the basolateral membrane and activate the basolateral sodium, potassium and chloride co-transporters. Now as I told you that chlorine, if it enters into the lumen, it will all spread out its negative charge and increase the negativity. So in order to balance that, the sodium has to be called out, because it will have its positive charge. Now here sodium will take an entry. Sodium will come and spread its positive charge. This will happen across the tight junctions of the cell. Water and electrolytes will also be called into the tight junction. The basolateral sodium potassium chlorine co-transporter and sodium potassium ATP serve to maintain the intracellular electrolyte and osmotic balance. The calcium also stimulates exocytosis, but to a lesser extent when compared to the CAMP. This will modify certain proteins and lead to exocytosis and intracellular sodium concentration. Sorry, calcium. Now that was all about basic histology of salivary gland and secretion of saliva. Hope you all enjoyed the lecture. Thank you so much.